What is natural law? If you've heard the term thrown around but aren't quite sure what it means, you're not alone. In fact, this was one of the most Googled questions of 2021. Now, when people think of natural law, they often think about what they see in nature, like predator-prey relationships or the mating rituals of birds. But in philosophy, natural law is actually a way of explaining morality. And today, we're going to break down everything you need to know about it, including its origins, main principles, and some of its strengths and weaknesses. Welcome to the course, where we explore and explain the world's religions and belief systems. Let's get into it. When discussing morality, we're talking about how people determine what is right and wrong. Now, many religions base their concept of morality off of a divine being, like God, who hands down rules that his followers must abide by in order to go to heaven when they die. For example, the Ten Commandments are considered the basis of Judeo-Christian morality, which means Jews and Christians have been taught from an early age that if they want to be good people, they must follow these 10 rules. But not all philosophies of morality rely on a higher power. Instead, Stoicism teaches that we can discover morality through our own reasoning and senses, which makes Stoic morality a type of natural law. So what exactly does that mean? To answer that question, let's do what Stoics did best, and that's to go back to basics. For the Stoics, life was simple. There were two types of things in the world: the things we can control and the things we can't. The idea was that if we focus too much of our energy on the things we don't have control over, we would become unhappy. Instead, we should turn our attention to what we can control, like our thoughts and our actions, and try to make those as good as possible. But what does good even mean? Well, according to the Stoics, it means living virtuously. The Stoics believed that being virtuous meant living according to nature. Now, they didn't mean that we should run around on all fours or live in caves. Instead, they thought we had to use our uniquely human capabilities to discern what was right and wrong, and then do what was right. They believed that humans were rational creatures, which meant we could use our intellect to figure out what was in line with nature. And if we were honest with ourselves about what we discovered through our reason, we would naturally want to do the right thing. To better understand this, let's look at the origin of Stoic morality. There are four main figures in ancient Stoicism: Zeno of Citium, Cleanthes, Chrysippus, and Posidonius. But the Stoa we're concerned about here is the last of these four, Posidonius, because he's credited with making the concept of natural law more philosophical, instead of based solely on tradition. For Posidonius, morality began with virtue, which came from knowledge. That means the more you knew, the more virtuous you would be. He also believed that the source of morality was inside humans, not outside of us. Posidonius argued that since we had reason, we could escape the winds of nature and make choices about how we lived our lives. That doesn't mean he rejected all emotions. In fact, he believed that having feelings was part of being human, but what he wanted to stop was letting our emotions rule us. This idea that we shouldn't just follow our feelings is still relevant today. Imagine that you've worked really hard for something and you finally reach your goal. You might be tempted to feel proud of yourself, But a Stoic would warn you against letting that pride grow into arrogance, or imagine you've done something wrong. It's easy to let guilt push you to apologize quickly, even if you don't really mean it. A Stoic would encourage you to feel guilt so that you know you did something wrong, but then take time to reflect on what you did and why it wasn't good before apologizing. So for Posidonius, emotions like pride and guilt were fine, but we needed to be careful that they didn't get the better of us. Ultimately, we had to be the ones in control. With this in mind, let's take a look at the core of Stoic morality. Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus built on Posidonius's ideas and further developed the idea of natural law, but they also came up with lists of rules for how people should behave. Though there were different versions of these rules, they usually boiled down to four core moral principles: courage, wisdom, justice, and temperance. These four principles can be difficult to put into practice, but we'll give you a few examples to help clarify them. First, courage is pretty straightforward. It means doing what you believe is right even when you're afraid. For a Stoic, that could mean standing up for someone who's being bullied, speaking out against a corrupt leader, or sticking to your values even when others are pressuring you to conform. Second, wisdom is about using your reason to make smart decisions and avoid being ruled by your emotions. It means taking the time to think things through before you act, asking yourself whether your actions are in line with your values, and being open to changing your mind when you realize you're wrong. Third, justice is about treating others fairly and doing what's right for the common good. It means being honest and keeping your promises, being respectful towards others, and working to make the world a better place for everyone. Finally, temperance is about self-control and avoiding excess. It means being aware of your limits and knowing when you've had enough, being grateful for what you have and not wanting more, and taking care of your body and mind so that you can be at your best. The Stoics believed that these four principles could guide us to what was right, but they also taught that we had to actively practice them in our everyday lives. But even more important than the principles themselves was how the Stoics saw human responsibility. In order for these principles to work, they had to be taught to people and then practiced voluntarily. The Stoics weren't big on original sin, the idea that humans are born inherently bad. Instead, they believed that we were born inherently good, and that it was up to us to live up to our potential. That meant that there was no divine being watching over our shoulders, ready to punish us if we did something wrong. We didn't have to fear hell or damnation. Instead, we had to face the consequences of our actions in this life. This idea of human responsibility is still relevant today. When people talk about doing good, they often mean helping others, donating to charity, or volunteering their time. But doing good doesn't always require grand gestures. In fact, sometimes the most important things we can do are the simplest, like listening to a friend who needs to talk, offering a helping hand to someone who's struggling, or just being there for someone who's going through a tough time. These small acts of kindness may not make headlines, but they're the backbone of any strong community. And they're also in line with the Stoics' emphasis on personal responsibility and living in accordance with nature. This brings us to the strengths and criticisms of natural law. One of the main strengths of this system is that it relies only on the individual. There's no need for a priest or religious text to tell you what to do. If you're faced with a moral dilemma, you can consult your reason and determine for yourself what the best course of action is. Another strength of Stoic morality is that it's universal. Anyone can follow it regardless of where they're from or what culture they're a part of. This makes it a very inclusive system and allows people from all walks of life to come together under a shared set of values. One criticism of Stoic morality is that it can be cold and unfeeling. By emphasizing reason and self-control, it can be easy to see other humans as nothing more than rational beings, instead of complex individuals with needs and feelings. This can lead to a lack of empathy and compassion, which are essential for building meaningful relationships. Another criticism of Stoic morality is that it doesn't provide any real motivation for people to do good. If there's no divine being watching over our shoulders, then there's no real punishment for doing bad. This can lead to a lack of accountability and allow people to get away with harmful behavior. Finally, the biggest criticism of Stoic morality is that it doesn't rely on a divine being. For many people, this is a fatal flaw. They argue that without God, there's no real basis for morality. If we can't trust the Bible or the Quran to tell us what's right and wrong, then we're on our own, and there's no real way to ensure that everyone does the right thing. So what do you think? Is human reason enough to guide us to morality, or do we need the help of a divine being? As we wrap up our exploration of Stoic morality, remember that while there may not be a single, easy answer to these complex questions, the journey of seeking wisdom and understanding is a worthwhile one. The Stoics believed that living a virtuous life was the ultimate goal, and that meant striving to be the best version of ourselves. Whether or not you agree with every aspect of Stoic philosophy, you can still appreciate the value of these ancient teachings and apply them to your own life. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of Stoic morality. We hope you've learned something new and found insights that can help you navigate the complexities of life. Remember, the pursuit of wisdom and self-improvement is a lifelong journey, and we're here to support you along the way. Thanks for learning with us, and we'll see you next time.